Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking the core frameworks from 10 absolutely essential startup books and distilling them down into the ultimate roadmap for building a company. Look, every successful founder you admire has one major thing in common. They didn't figure it all out on their own. Behind every massive product launch or that crazy Series A round, there's usually a stack of dog-eared books that completely shaped how that founder thinks. Now, reading these isn't going to magically build your startup for you, but what they will do is save you from making the exact same expensive, agonizing mistakes that have already been documented and solved by the folks who walked through the fire before you.
What important truth do very few people agree with you on? Before you spend a single dime, Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1 really forces you to confront this incredibly uncomfortable question. Why? To find your defensible monopoly. It is literally the ultimate litmus test for your vision. Because think about it, if you're just agreeing with the general consensus, well, you're already behind.
To make this super actionable, we're mapping these 10 books out across the 5 critical phases of the founder's journey. We've got mindset, validation, execution, scaling, and culture. So let's stop guessing and start building systematically.
Phase 1 is mindset, the founder's lens. This phase is all about how you think, simply because having the right mindset dictates which of your ideas are actually worth executing. You really have to understand how to view the world before you can change it. And Thiel's core argument from 0 to 1 brilliantly illustrates exactly this. Real value, it isn't created by competing in super crowded markets. It's made by creating something that literally did not exist before. Copying what already works and just taking it global, that's just going from 1 to N. But creating something entirely brand new, like, say, moving from typewriters to word processors, now that is going from 0 to 1. That's real progress, and honestly, it's where the massive value gets created.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, but I don't have millions in venture capital to just build a massive monopoly from scratch. Well, you don't always need it. As Chris Guillebeau proves in the $100 startup, so many founders win without any groundbreaking technological advantage. They just start with totally ordinary skills, tiny amounts of cash, and a deep, deep understanding of what their specific customers will actually open their wallets for.
Moving on to phase 2, validation, testing your idea. Once your mindset is locked in, we move to validation. This is how you avoid spending years perfecting a product that literally nobody asked for. The absolute crucial point from Ries's The Lean Startup is this exact feedback loop. You have to let real user data, not your own biased assumptions, decide what you build next. You build a minimum viable product, you measure how actual humans respond to it, and then you learn from that data. Startups rarely fail just because they run out of money. They fail because they spend all their time and resources building something in a total vacuum. This loop right here, it completely changes how you test an idea before you blow your budget building the wrong thing. But hey, building a validated product is really only half the battle. How are people actually going to find it? When it comes to acquiring users, Gabriel Weinberg's book Traction reveals that there are exactly 19 distinct channels for customer acquisition. We're talking the whole shebang, everything from search engine marketing to viral loops to old-school offline events. There is a finite, measurable universe of ways to get attention. Of course, you can't just tackle all 19 channels at once, right? And marketing definitely shouldn't be a guessing game. So instead of crossing your fingers and hoping people magically find your product, you use the bullseye framework. This completely replaces the whole, we'll figure out marketing later vibe with an actual targeted process. It guides you to methodically test a few channels, see what really sticks, and then aggressively double down on those. It basically turns the total chaos of marketing into a predictable, scientific checklist. All right, phase 3 is execution, surviving the mess. What's really fascinating about this next phase is that it strips away all those polished, perfectly crafted PR stories and just dives headfirst into the brutal reality of running a company.
Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things gives you the totally unvarnished truth about managing your own psychology during the absolute worst moments. We're talking near bankruptcy, massive layoffs, and terrifying leadership decisions. Listen, when you're the CEO, there is rarely some clean, textbook answer to your biggest problems. This book? It's your survival guide for when absolutely everything is on fire and the buck stops entirely with you.
And if you ever think you're the only one struggling to keep it together, Jessica Livingston's Founders at Work really validates that chaos. She shows us that the early days of absolute giants like Apple and PayPal were unbelievably messy from the inside. We are talking intense co-founder conflicts, pure lucky breaks, and terrifying gambles. I mean, remember, PayPal almost died multiple times before it actually succeeded.
So if you've ever felt like your journey is just too uncertain, take some comfort in the fact that every famous success story looked exactly this messy behind closed doors.
Seriously, if you ever feel like just throwing in the towel, remember Phil Knight's Shoe Dog. It proves that even the most iconic brands required pure, stubborn persistence. Nike survived over a decade of intense financial stress, basically living constantly one bad month away from collapsing entirely. There was no clean magic formula, just sheer will and an absolute refusal to stop running.
Let's move to phase 4, scaling, crossing the chasm. So you've survived the early mess. Great. But now you've faced the growth trap that kills some incredibly promising startups. The reality is, what got you here just won't get you there.
Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm warns us that the exact pitch that got your very first users super excited will completely stall out when you try to sell to the cautious majority. The psychology just completely shifts. Early adopters, they're adventurous. They'll forgive your software bugs because they just love the novelty of it all. But the mainstream market, they want hard proof and a complete, totally risk-free solution. If you don't dramatically evolve your messaging to cross this gap, your startup will literally die right in the middle.
Now, if you're trying to steal that mainstream market away from an absolute giant, Clayton Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma shows you exactly how to exploit an established player's disciplined blind spots, and it's truly fascinating. Big companies actually fail because they do everything right. Think about it. They listen to their best customers, they heavily invest in their most profitable products. But doing all of that leaves massive, glaring blind spots at the lower end of the market. And that is exactly where a scrappy little startup can slide right in, take root, and eventually disrupt the entire industry. Finally, we reach phase 5, culture, the ultimate advantage. This is where we shift gears from merely launching a product to actually building an organization that lasts.
Tony Hsieh's Delivering Happiness uses the amazing story of Zappos to prove that company culture isn't just some soft HR buzzword. It is your absolute ultimate competitive advantage. So many founders treat culture as an afterthought, but legendary customer service, like those Zappos reps who would literally stay on the phone with a single customer for 10 straight hours, that's not an accident. It is an actual, highly measurable growth strategy that is fueled from the inside out. Building a deliberate culture really protects your startup. Why? Because it creates an environment where people actually want to work, and a brand that people genuinely want to buy from. It acts like a giant moat around your business that is incredibly hard for competitors to copy, simply because it's woven into every single interaction. Your product? Yeah, it might get cloned by someone tomorrow. But an outstanding culture that turns everyday customers into long-term vocal advocates? There's just no way to replicate that.
You absolutely do not need to go out and read all 10 of these books today, but I want you to take a hard look at your company right now. Ask yourself, if your startup were to fail tomorrow, which of these 5 phases would be the reason why? You need to identify your biggest bottleneck right now. Pick the specific book that solves it and let the founders who have already survived the fire guide your next move. So, what's holding you back right now, and which blueprint are you going to use to fix it?
Quick question. Could you explain what was in the last 5 books you read? Most people forget 90% of a book within a week. Reading isn't the problem, retaining is. The video display you see right now breaks down 10 tricks top leaders use to actually keep what they read. Smarter highlighting, a 1-page book map, and the 48-hour rule that decides if an idea sticks for life. If books ever slipped away a week later, this fixes that. It's on your screen now. Click it now and watch it.
So that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, leave a comment below, and consider subscribing. And share this video with your friends. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.